This is Rutherford Issues, hitting right at what matters most to all of us here in the heart of Tennessee. From Murfreesboro to Smyrna, Eagleville to Laverne, Leanna to Barfield, and everywhere in between. If it matters to you, you'll hear about it in the next hour here on Rutherford Issues. Now your host, Scott Walker.
Right now in studio, we have Terrance Haynes from SOP, Seeds of Praise, guiding our youth mentorship program. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine this morning. Thank you for asking.
Tell us a little bit about your organization. When did it start?
So Seeds of Praise, we started officially in 2019. The purpose of our organization is to provide mentorship and advocacy for kids, particularly kids that are coming out of the impoverished areas and, making sure that we're being good stewards in that regard.
What was the purpose of starting it?
It started as a result of just some tragic things that happened within my life and just made me to become more aware of things that we need to do, particularly within our middle schools and our high schools. In 2019, I actually lost one of my adult children to suicide. So that's kind of how the concept kind of came about when I thought back about missed opportunities with the young man that I've been raising for several years. And then right on top of that, of course, the pandemic happened. And then I also had another adopted child that I lost in 2020 to a homicide, another adult child. And so, originally Seeds of Praise kind of come out of that space of as an adult parent dealing with some tragic situations. And then I started thinking about all of the adult friends that I grew up with. And many of us have lost children to suicide, homicide, or our children are being incarcerated. And I started looking at what's going on with kids that are coming out of these economically disadvantaged homes and communities, and what can we do to kind of combat that.
Terrance, what are some of the biggest things that after they graduate high school, or maybe they don't graduate even, what are the biggest challenges they face? What are you seeing that's in common for each child turning into teen, then becoming an adult?
So one of the patterns that I'm seeing that's happening is that a lot of kids are leaving high school unprepared to be adults. They don't have the necessary skill set to be successful, productive adults. They don't have some of the background. And a lot of it has to do, I think, with the lack of academic preparation. Many of these children in these communities that we see are not doing well academically. You can look right here in the Rutherford County area, 65% to 70% of the children who are economically disadvantaged don't meet the academic benchmarks within our school systems. And we have great school systems in Rutherford County. We have great school systems in Williamson County. We have a great school system in Murray County. But that particular segment of the population is really behind the eight ball. And I think that mentorship programs is one of the strategies that I think that if we would invest more into mentorship programs, I think we'll see better results for our kids.
And what do the households look like where a lot of these kids are growing up?
Most of them are coming from households that single parent families. They deal with a lot with incarcerated parents. Some of the kids are coming from places where they are drug addiction and just addiction in general, trauma. It's really complex trauma and historical trauma. The cycle of trauma that hasn't been broken and it's hard to break. And I think that, one of the things that I've learned is that I was able to break that cycle because I acquired a set of principles over the course of my adolescence and into my adulthood that kind of helped push me into a better space. But that was because I also had people who weren't even actively trying to mentor me, but just engaging in my life. They weren't necessarily what I would call a mentor. It wasn't even an intentional thing. It was more of a program or an accidental type of encounter. And through those encounters, I was able to overcome some extreme barriers. I'm a child of a 14-year-old mother. My mother was 14 years old when I was born. My father spent most of my childhood in the prison system, and by the grace of God, I was able to overcome lots of things. And I think that we just need to be more intentional about what we're doing with the youth, particularly in middle school and high school, and how we show up for them, how we support them, how we advocate for them, and really to help move them into a different mind space.
And you had two massive losses in your life in a relatively short period of time. With those losses, what was it that made you say to yourself, I've got to figure out, first of all, what happened in their life? And then second, how can I prevent this from happening in another teenager's or young adult's life?
And again, I think that when it happened to me personally, it made me step back and look at the situation. But what I realized when I stepped back to look at the situation, I wasn't the only person who I grew up with who had already faced this tragedy. I had a cousin that lost his life around the same time. He's in the same age group as these two young men that I lost. Another kid in Franklin whose parents I grew up with, that child was killed a week later. A week after my son was killed, he was killed in Franklin. And so I can give you 4 instances within a matter of those 2 years that really hit close to home. And all of these young men were great young men. They just didn't have the skill and the opportunity and people that really invested in them while they were in high school, middle school, that would help push them to another space. And so I think that that's one of the things that as I look back on, I realized that we're not doing enough within that community to be mentorship minded, to be supportive, to be advocates, and to make sure our kids are leaving elementary school with the proper academic skills to be productive and successful. That was one of the differences between me and my peers, is that I was a straight A student. I was an athlete, but because I had the academic things in place, it allowed me to take a different path. I wasn't planning on going to college when I finished high school. That was not something that was in my mindset. Nobody told me that I had to go to college. My counselors didn't even engage me around going to college. And I was probably one of the top academic black males in my school at the time. And nobody was talking to me about going to college in my high school.
So why don't you think they were talking to you about going to college?
I have no idea. I really don't. I have no idea, other than the fact that I was one of those kids that was coming out of a impoverished neighborhood, that maybe they thought that wasn't something that I was able to do.
I'm sure there's a lot of school districts around the nation that do a great job in working with children who are in poverty, and they do a great job with helping them make that next step in life. Maybe it's college, maybe it's a technical school, whatever it may be. But here in Middle Tennessee, do you think schools do a very good job overall in helping those kids who are in poverty figure out what step they need to take?
I can say in some instances they're doing a good job. Overall, what the data shows me that we're not. Because when I look at the data in any of these school districts, and 65 to 70% of the poor kids are not academically prepared, there's a problem with that. And you can look at any of the school districts within this area, and you're going to see that type of pattern, that 60 to 70% of the children that are just coming out of, if you just look at the economically disadvantaged children, 60 to 70% of them are not meeting the academic benchmarks necessary to go on to college. So we do have to do a better job of making sure that they have the options of technical schools. I'm not pushing that everybody needs to go to college. If I was making a decision today about my future, it probably would not be college. It probably would be more technical. We also need to look at what's going on with military services. Like there are I know a couple of my friends actually did military service, and they are very productive, very successful men and women who took that route. We just need to make sure that our children are engaged with opportunities to have different routes. And I think that that's what's happening with children from economically disadvantaged families because of the historical trauma. They're not having access to people who are having those conversations with them.
And I guess there's also less parent involvement in a lot of those households where you have, if it's a single parent household, you have mom working around the clock or dad working around the clock just to put food on the tables. So they don't literally have time to go to the school to figure out, hey, what's Junior need to do next?
Absolutely. I know that in many of the situations where the children are struggling the most, those parents are working 3 jobs just to stay broke. I have to say, I have a doctorate degree. I make almost 6 figures a year, and it's still tough for me and my family to make ends meet right now sometimes, So I feel that struggle. I feel that pain. Those parents are definitely doing what they think that they need to do to provide for their families. But as a community, I think that there are things that we can do when it comes to mentorship programs and advocacy programs. And we just need to focus a little bit more in that space. There are a set of principles that I think that we need to focus on that we're not getting within the school systems that we used to maybe get more information around. There used to be times when it was okay to talk about some of the social emotional learning that children need to be doing and really combating that, but it's such an emphasis on the academic piece that we're losing ground on understanding the whole child and the needs of the whole child.
Again, Terrance Haynes in studio with us today. So how do you go about getting kids to participate in your mentorship program?
One of the strategies that I'm currently using is that I'm reaching out to particularly the black male educators in the area and forming relationships and connections with them, and also with just educators in general. But I got a group of about 10 black men in Rutherford County that we are starting to meet consistently and strategize and have conversations about what do we need to do, what can we do, set some goals, and look at opportunities for us to impact the lives of the children. I think that people who work with children all the time, that's one of the best resources that's not tapped into. I'm talking to some of the youth coaches, like the AAU basketball coaches and things of that nature. We put a lot of emphasis on our athletic programs. I just want us to put some emphasis on the other pieces that need to go with that, because you can be a great athlete, but if you can't get into college, then what have I done for you?
And how can people learn more? How can they get a hold of you? How can they learn more about your program?
So the website is seedsofpraise.com. You can just really find out a lot of information there. We got a Facebook page as well, and I don't mind even sharing my number, the 615-720-8317. You can message me there directly. One of the things I'm definitely looking for is to build more capacity, get more people involved. I'm looking to get some more board members on board with the organization. Looking to make some opportunities to connect with some of the business communities in the area to kind of let's just strategize around these are potential folks that's going to work in your businesses one day. And so the Blueprint for Success program, the Blueprint for Success curriculum talks about 9 principles that when kids have these 9 principles, they're going to be better citizens. And so we talk about how to maintain a positive mental attitude. That's one of my things in my curriculum. We talk about measures, which is basically setting goals. We talk about how to focus on the now, how to use your imagination to be creative. We talk about how do you make allies, how do you work in harmony. These are all skill sets that we have as productive, successful people, and we need to make sure that kids who are coming from disadvantaged environments get these skills as well.
And sometimes all it takes is helping, someone who's a teenager change the way they think, and that can literally turn a life around.
It definitely can. And I want to say that, one of the things I want to emphasize too is that when it comes to this work, it's going to take all of us working together to do this. Some of the most significant people that impacted my life didn't look like me. I think that there are opportunities there. Like, for instance, my first baseball coach was a guy named Peyton Hogue. His 2 sons are magnificent songwriters right now. Neither one of them went to college, but because of my interactions with that family, it gave me the opportunity to see family life from a different perspective. And I always remembered that as I was growing up. My 2nd grade teacher, Miss Bates, is the one who actually put the mindset in my mind as a 2nd grade student. She said to me, one day you're going to go to college. I had no idea what she was talking about. And 12 years later, I still wasn't thinking about going to college. And then I met a guy named Jack Clunder who had attended Hope College in Holland, Michigan, was friends with the football coach. He says, hey, I'm going to introduce you to the football coach at Hope College. Introduced me to the football coach at Hope College. I ended up going to Hope College and graduating from Hope College, all because I had maybe 3 or 4 interactions with Jack Clunder, a white male pastor working with a youth group. I say these things to say that people are always having opportunities to change the lives of other people. That's one of the things that I'm just trying to do as the leader of Seeds of Praise is how do we have the opportunity to change the lives of a few people, because the problem is so big now. You just really have to look at it as one kid at a time, because when I look at the data that I look at, there are 5,000 economically disadvantaged kids who took the assessment, 2024 TCAP assessment, that didn't do well on it. And so those 5,000 children are definitely in jeopardy of not having a productive life.
Here in Rutherford County?
Here in Rutherford County.
That's a lot of kids.
That's a lot of kids. Now, of course, you're thinking about this 30,000 of them that took the assessment. So that's a small portion, but 5,000 is a lot of people.
Definitely is.
It's a lot of people.
And again, with us in studio, Terrance Haynes with SOP, or Seeds of Praise, guiding our youth mentorship program. And to find you online, you just go to seedsofpraise.com. Is that right?
Yep, seedsofpraise.com is our website. You can find it on Facebook as well.
Probably search it on Google.
It should come up.
Well, we are already out of time, but we appreciate you joining us this morning.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
We do have more news and information coming your way next.
Rutherford Issues on News Radio WGNS.